Here's a perpetrator that walks in, but it's going to be your lack of response. So let me explain this video and how this is what all these perpetrators that have been training and utilizing the sender capabilities in the Department of Defense over at the Naval Postgraduate School, where they brought it in as this man-portable Defense Advanced Research Project Agency's neurotechnology, third generation. The whole goal of the weaponization of cognitive neuroscience and neurotechnologies and a bidirectional artificial intelligence mainly is that it allows for a sender to come in, which is the male. Let me see if I get my finger. This guy here that walked in. And all these people are rendered incapable of protecting themselves because they get placed in almost like a altered hypnotic state where you're in motion, you're standing there, but you're helpless to defend yourself against an attack. Now what happens is this guy comes in and almost in slow motion, he pulls out, he talks to them, uses hand signals, pulls out a gun, and they're all sitting there looking at him with the gun, and then he cocks the gun, or he could have been no different than coming in to load a gun, okay? And then he proceeds to fire. Now, the biggest thing that you're going to see is the lack of response, the fight or flight, the adrenaline or whatever of seeing someone with a gun, okay? And that is what the military, the Department of Defense, and the weaponization of cognitive neuroscience and neurotechnologies and bidirectional signals is that you could get an assassin to walk into a room full of people and they're sitting there looking at the person, even with the gun. There's zero reaction, next to zero reaction, okay? And then he not only fires the gun, but walks out, and you see even after he walks out, there's no response, or next to no response. And that is what the weaponization of this Defense Advanced Research Project Agency's neurotechnology third generation bidirectional brain-computer interface is all about. Is to allow for an assassin to walk into a room, and had he decided or was allowed to, he could have killed every single one of those people in there, and none of them would have dropped to the floor to try to protect themselves. That renders the victim unable. So there's the sender and receivers. And depending on the frequency is how the brain functions. Now here in Pacific Grove, California, off Erdley Avenue, the civilian population of these recruits have been allowed to be these so-called senders. And they come in and they attack me. And I've got the medical documentation to prove the physical assaults that I have sustained. They have human trafficked. They have committed fraud, defrauding, signature fraud through all coercion. And these civilians think that they're going to be in charge of a weapon that the military has developed so that a guy like him could walk into a room, render the people sitting here helpless to defend themselves. That would be an assassin could walk into a room and kill people. In my case, they come into my home through rigged access points in this private rental and do the same thing, only they're not allowed to kill me. But what they have been allowed to do is attack. And I will swear to this in a court of law under penalty of perjury about the weaponization and offensive use of cognitive neuroscience and neurotechnologies in a bidirectional capability where there's a sender and receiver, and the receiver is rendered helpless and unable to defend themselves. It is the purest form of aggravated mayhem and torture, because the people who attack me have a total indifference to my safety and or well-being. And they are training these walker stalkers in communities because they believe that they're going to be in charge of a system that is basically being used to teach artificial general intelligence. You could fire up an entire country and you could utilize it for what it was always designed for, mass subjugation. So I'm going to show the video again. And it's all about the lack of response to these people. Hand signals. This guy in the purple, guys, pulls out the gun. He's cocking the gun. What kind of response do you see? Zero, fight or flight. He even walks out. Now look at their response. It's like nothing fucking happened. So this whole thing that I'm trying to explain over here is the ability to use a biological, technological weapon of mass destruction to render an entire masses of people where you dull their fight or flight and they just sit there. And look at these people here. Not only do they sit there, but watch them be absolutely emotionless. Now the guy's got the gun in their faces. He even fires the gun. And that's what the military designed, these bidirectional brain-computer interfaces. Motherfucker even walks the fuck out. The perpetrator walks out, waves goodbye. And there's nothing. Look at the guy in the maroon jacket with the white yarmulke. Nothing. So, under penalty of perjury, I am swearing that the United States Department of Defense, along with their corporate and academic counterparts in the Defense Advanced Research Project agencies, bidirectional brain-computer interface, have weaponized these technologies, and were always meant to be weaponized. They are using the civilian population, in particular here on the Monterey Peninsula. They are using Erdley Avenue and my address at 418 Erdley Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, as a targeting point by allowing these civilian senders to come and attack so they could develop them even further. What I saw on February 1st, 2023 in San Francisco at a Russian-speaking Jewish synagogue was what it was always designed to do. Get an assassin to walk into a room, literally show the victims the guns, could load the gun and fire that gun, and every single one of those occupants there were sitting fucking ducks because their brain was being tampered with in pure and concentrated aggravated mayhem. They basically deprived those individuals of the fight or flight in order to protect themselves against such a brutal, brutal fucking attack. And I don't give a shit if they were fucking blank bullets. And I will swear under penalty of perjury that the United States Department of Defense over at the Monterey's Naval Postgraduate School, along with the other military personnel here on this Monterey Peninsula, along with their classified information operation and joint special operation training, have been using not only this peninsula, but Erdley Avenue in Pacific Grove, California, as a target range. And they're using the civilian population, and they're paying them or giving them some form of bribery and compensation in a pyramid scheme. The city of Pacific Grove knows full well what the fuck is going on, along with other city governments, and they're brokering deals with these terrorists. And under penalty of perjury, the name is June, June, middle initial T, last name Kuwatani. And what you saw in that video was the true measure of what the United States Department of Defense has been developing and allowing the civilian population to utilize. This would be an assassin walking into a room while the victims are rendered unable to protect themselves, in similar to a fight or flight, and their senses are so dulled, it's like it doesn't mean shit to them. Or in my case, they blind my visual and auditory so that they can come up and stand right in front of me and I can't even see their faces. And then they brutally assault, attack with tasers, everything. In this case, this man walked in with a gun. And what you see throughout the whole process is the lack of response. He even waves goodbye.